Hello. I am going to start reading a new book today. It is called Rain, Rain, and you will notice from the title that rain and rain, of course, are spelled differently but sound the same. Those are homophones. Some people call them homonyms. And I want to tell you that the character in this book likes... Actually, it says that she's obsessed, more than likes. She's obsessed with homonyms. So you're going to hear at times when I'm reading, and it sounds like I'm repeating a word, but I'm really not. I'm just saying those homonyms one right after the other the way the character does in the book. Obviously, the point of view is hers. It's first person. And so you're going to hear those at times, and so I'm not repeating myself. I'm actually continuing to read what she has written. So this book is called Rain, Rain. I have read it a number of times with my students, and we just love it. So let's start with chapter 1, and it's also part 1, the first part. Who I am. A girl named Rose. Rose. So remember to make a question from your chapter title. Well, who is this girl named Rose? Is she going to tell us about herself? I am Rose Howard, and my first name has a homonym. To be accurate, it has a homophone, which is a word that's pronounced the same as another word, but spelled differently. My homonym name is Rose, R-O-W-S. Most people say homonym when they mean homophone. My teacher, Mrs. Cushel, says this is a common mistake. What's the difference between making a mistake and breaking a rule? I want to know. Making a mistake is accidental. Breaking a rule is deliberate. But if, I start to say, Mrs. Cushel rushes on. It's all right to say homonym when we mean homophone. That's called a colloquialism. Breaking has a homonym, I tell her. Breaking. I like homonyms a lot. And I like words, rules, and numbers too. Here is the order, excuse me, in which I like these things. 1, words, especially homonyms. 2, rules. 3, numbers, especially prime numbers. I'm going to tell you a story. It's a true story, which makes it a piece of nonfiction. This is how you tell a story. First, you introduce the main character. I'm writing the story about me, so I am the main character. My first name has a homonym, and I gave my dog a homonym name too. Her name is Rain, which is special because it has 2 homonyms, Rain and Rain. R-A-I-N, R-E-I-N, and R-E-I-G-N. I will write more about Rain in chapter 2. Chapter 2 will be called My Dog Rain, Rain, Rain. Something important about the word right is that it has 3 homonyms, right, right, and right. That's the only group of 4 homonyms that I know of. If I ever think of another 4 homonym group, it will be a red letter day. I don't know what she means by red letter day. I live with my father, Wesley Howard, and neither of his names has a homonym. From our porch, you can see our front yard, and our driveway, and our road, which is called Head Road. Road has 2 homonyms, road and road. On the other side of the road is a little forest, and through the trees, you can see the New York Thruway. The word see has a homonym, see, but even better, sees has 2 homonyms, sees and sees. I'm in 5th grade at Hatford Elementary. There's only 1 elementary school in Hatford, New York, and only 1 5th grade classroom in the school, and I'm in it. Most of my classmates are 10 years old or about to turn 11. I'm almost 12 because no one is sure what to do with me in school. I wonder why they don't know what to do with her. I've stayed back for 2 semesters, which is a total of 1 year. Half plus half equals 1. Some of the things I get teased about are following the rules and always talking about homonyms. Mrs. Liebler is my aide, and she sits with me in Mrs. Cushell's room. She sits in an adult-sized chair next to my 5th grade-sized chair and rests her hand on my arm when I blurt something out in the middle of math. Or if I whap myself in the head and start to cry, she'll say, "Rose, do you need to step into the hall for a moment?" Mrs. Liebler tells me that there are things worth talking about besides homonyms and rules and prime numbers. She encourages me to think up conversation starters. Some conversation starters about me that do not have anything to do with homonyms or rules or prime numbers are: 1, I live in a house that faces northeast. After I say that, I ask the person I'm trying to have a conversation with, "And which direction does your house face?" Down the road, 0.7 miles from my house is the J&R garage, where my father sometimes works as a mechanic. And 0.1 miles further along is a bar called the Luck of the Irish, where my father goes after work. There is nothing between my house and the J&R garage except trees and the road. Tell me some things about your neighborhood. I have an uncle named Weldon, who is my father's younger brother. And who else is in your family? My official diagnosis is high-functioning autism, which some people call Asperger's syndrome. Do you have a diagnosis? I will finish up this part of my introduction by telling you that my mother does not live with my father and me. She ran away from our family when I was 2. Therefore, the people living in my house are my father and me. The dog living in our house is Rain. Uncle Weldon lives 3.4 miles away on the other side of Hatford. The next part of my introduction is the setting of my story. I've already told you my geographic location, Hud Road in Hatford, New York. The historical moment in time in which the story begins is October of my year in 5th grade. Now I will tell you something troubling about 5th grade. It isn't as troubling as what happens later in the story when my father lets Rain outside during a hurricane, but it is still troubling. For the first time in my life, I'm being sent home with weekly progress reports that I have to give to my father. The reports are written by Mrs. Liebler and read and signed by Mrs. Cushell, which is my teacher's way of saying that they're in agreement about my behavior. The report lists all of my notable behaviors for Monday through Friday. Some of the comments are nice, such as the ones about when I participate appropriately in a classroom discussion. But most of the comments make my father slam the reports onto the table and say, "Rose, for God's sake, keep your mouth closed when you think of a homonym." Or, "Do you see any of the other kids clapping their hands over their ears and screaming when they hear the fire alarm?" In the last report, Mrs. Liebler and Mrs. Cushell asked my father to schedule monthly meetings with them. Now he's supposed to go to Hatford Elementary on the 3rd Friday of every month at 3:45 p.m. to discuss me. This is what he said when he read that. "I don't have time for meetings. This is way too much trouble, Rose. Why do you do these things?" He said that at 3:48 p.m. on a Friday when there is no work for him at the J&R garage. Uncle Weldon heard about the monthly meetings on October 3rd at 8:10 in the evening when he was visiting my father and Rain and me. My father was standing at the front door, holding the letter in his hand and gazing out at the trees in the darkness. "These meetings are crap," he said. Uncle Weldon, who was sitting at the Formica kitchen table with me, looked at my father from under his lashes and said, "I could go if you want." Uncle Weldon has a very soft voice. My father whipped around and pointed his finger at Weldon. "No! Rose is my responsibility. I can take care of things." Weldon lowered his head, and didn't answer. But when my father turned around so that he was facing outside again, my uncle held up 2 crossed fingers, which was his signal to me that everything would be all right. Right. I held up my 2 fingers too, and we touched our hearts with them. After that, Rain came into the kitchen and sat on my feet for a while. Then my uncle left. Then my father crumpled the letter from Mrs. Liebler and Mrs. Cushel and tossed it into the yard. That is the end of the introduction to me. I wonder why her dad's so angry. And he doesn't want to go to the meetings, and he just threw the letter outside, which probably means that he doesn't care about the meetings. But I wonder why he's so angry. And I wonder exactly what is autism and Asperger's form of autism. I really think you should look that up and see what you can find out about it.